Good evening, everyone. Myself, I'm Kashyap from VPL and Ludhiana. Hope everyone and their family will be fine during this tragedy COVID-19. We have a series of textile learning. Today is my first session introduction of textile coloration, classification, and affinity of dyes and fibers. So let's start. During this session, we will discuss about the content, color mixing, about the color, type of color mixing, classifications of dyes, affinity of dyes and fiber, the basics operation in dyeing and chemicals processing, reactive dyes and flow process. The last one, the common terms used in the dyeing process. Introduction to textile coloration. Textiles are usually colored to make them attractive for aesthetic, FPL, or for function reasons. Example: military, camouflage, and fluorescent jackets for road repair, or police personnel, etc. Life would be more hazardous and certainly dull if textiles were used only in their natural colors. There are two ways of adding colors to a textile substrate: printing and dyeing. Printing adds color to surface where dyeing completely covers the substrate with color. Now we'll discuss about the color. Color is perception. Our eye see something, example sky, and data sent to our eye to our brain tells us it's certain color blue. The object reflects the light in different combination of wavelengths. Our brain pick up on those wavelengths combination and translate into the phenomenon we call color. There are three terms generally used to describe and specify color: hue, value, and chroma. They are briefly discussed below. Hue is the term used for the color. Example: mu, scarlet, beige, tan. Value is the term to describe lightness, darkness, tone, and shade of hues. A color is termed light in value when it approaches white, dark in value when it approaches deep color or approaches black. Chroma is the term used to describe depth of a color, that is dullness, brightness, saturation, intensity, and vividness of the purity of a color. The relationship between the chroma, value, and hues illustrates in the figure. Now, color mixing. There are two types of color mixing. Number one, additive color mixing. Number two, subtractive color mixing. Now we will discuss about additive color mixing. As described in the figure, blue, green, and red light waves, when mixed, all will add together to produce white light. At present, there are no satisfactory explanation for this phenomenon. Red, blue, and green are thus called the primary additive colors. The additive phenomenon is shown in the figures. Now the subtractive color mixing. The mixing of dyes, printing paste, paint and pigment is called subtractive color mixing. The term subtractive is used as color is subtracted or removed from each color to produce black. The three subtractive primary colors are in fact the secondary color yellow, cyan and magenta. The figure shown how to primary subtractive color can be combined to produce black. Now the classifications of dyes. There are basically two ways of classifying various dye stuffs according to use and according to their chemical constitutions. The use-wise classification of dye stuff is more important from the practical point of view. That's shown in the chart in next slide. The term synthetic is used for all dyes that are available in colored form as ready-made dyes. Natural dyes are also included in the chart as the extract of a vast number of plants and some from animal origin and used for dyeing silk, wool and cotton. Some wet dyes, azoic dye, pigment insoluble dyes are used without converting them into soluble form, generally for textile printing. The classification of dyes has shown in the chart. The coloring matter has categorized in dye step and pigment. Now the dye step has categorized in three types: synthetic, natural and in-grain dyes. And again synthetic dyes has categorized in two types: water soluble and water insoluble. Now we have five types of water soluble dyes: direct, reactive, acid, basic and optical whiteners. In our dye house we are using optical whiteners and reactive dyes of this category. Water insoluble dyes, we have three types of water insoluble dyes: wet dye, sulfur dye and dispersed dye. Normally we are using dispersed dyes in our dye house for polyester dyeing. The sulfur dyes are famous for their jet black color and dischargeable properties. Normally we cannot achieve the same color, jet black color, in reactive dye and other brands. Before there was no light color in sulfur dyes, but now the sulfast has introduced light color series also. More about this we will discuss in upcoming seasons. The next in-grain dyes has categorized in azoic dyes, oxidation colors and mineral colors. The last one, pigments, has categorized in four groups: wet, azoic, mineral and phthalocyanine. Now we will discuss about the affinity of dyes and fiber. A fiber vary considerably in chemical structure, and as dye also have different groups that characterize them, it can be easily understood that all dyes will not have the same affinity for all fibers. In the table the black mark has present different type of different dyes and different fibers. For example, dispersed dyes have excellent affinity for the commonly dyed synthetic fibers like nylon, polyester and acrylic, but none for the cellulose or protein fibers. Similarly, azoic and wet dyes are applicable only to the cellulose fibers but not to the other common fibers. The basic operations in chemical processing. The wet processing sector can be divided into three separate sections: preparation, coloration and finishing process. The preparation process, these processes exist to ensure the textile has right physical and chemical properties to enable it to be colored or finished. Example of covering, bleaching and heat setting. Coloring process. These processes exist to provide the textile with color, either aesthetic reason for the functional purpose or determined by the product. Example, dyeing, printing. Finishing process. The process exists to provide the textile with the property of the end use of demand and which have already been provided by the earlier process. Example, water repellency, flame retardancy, handle modification and antibacterial. The next, reactive dyes. Due to the lack of time, we are not going to describe reactive dye in details. We can say little about it. We have planned to describe it in upcoming seasons. There are four different types of reactive dyes: cold, hot, damageful and bifunctional reactive dyes. Advantage of reactive dyes: available in complete range of color, including very bright colors, very good fastness property like passing, croaking, laundering, light, etc. High flexibility in choice of method of applications. The common flow line diagram for exhaust dyeing process: crayons, covering, bleaching as per requirement, preparations of dye bath, dyeing, start dyeing, neutralization process to remove the alkali from the fiber, soaping process to remove unfixed dyes from the surface of the yarn, rinsing, fixation as per requirement and softening. Now the common terms used in the dyeing: substantivity, affinity, penetration, absorption, Becker ratio, shade percentage, barrier dyeing, channeling, 4R principle, and the last one is specific gravity. The first one, substantivity, affinity. The substantivity of a dye for a fiber can be defined as an attraction between the fiber and dye under the given dyeing condition, whereby the dye is specifically extracted from an application medium by the fiber. The next, penetration. The general transport for the molecules of a chemical or a dye deeper and deeper into the accessible region of the molecular structure is called penetration. Absorption. This is the measure of the proportion of the dye absorbed by the fiber in relation to the remaining in the dye bath. Thus, it indicate the amount of the dye that is moved from the solution into the fiber under given the dyeing condition. It also measured the substantivity of the dye of the fiber. Absorption is expressed the terms of percentage. In the terms absorption is mainly applicable to batch wide dyeing, which is called exhaust dyeing. Yarn dyeing and fabric are openly dyed with the exhaust dye technique. Material accuracy. So this expression refers to the weight volume relationship between the fiber to be dyed and the total volume of the dye bath. Shade percentage. Shade percentage refers to the quality of the dye taken from the dyeing expressed to percentage of the dry weight and of the fiber and to be dyed. Example: 1 gram of the dye taken for the dyeing 100 gram of the textile material. It's said to be dyed 1% shade. Barre dyeing, a term generally used for improperly dyed nylon, cotton, and polyester material, which shown isolated bands of approximately dark, light, and dyed portions in the fabric form. Hence the term barre or barrenness. Now the channeling. When the packing of the textile material for the purpose of passing process chemicals through the proper density, the process liquor will pass through the parts where the density is least. This is called the channeling, and it's not desirable. 4R principle. This is the term related to environment friendly practices in textile operations. It advocates the industry to reject banned items, replace harmful chemicals, reduce chemical and quantity used, and recycle dyed and water. The last one, specific gravity. The specific gravity is the ratio of density of an object and a reference substance. The specific gravity can tell us its value if the object will sink or float on in our reference substance. Usually our reference substance is water, which always has a density of 1 gram per milliliter or 1 gram per centimeter. It can be checked by hydrometer. During the wet processing of textile fiber, different types of chemicals are used in solution form. To know the proportion of chemicals the solution or to understand the specific gravity of the solution, use an instrument known as hydrometer. Hydrometer is used to find the specific gravity of the solution of acid, alkalis, and salt prepared for the dyeing process. Specific gravity is very useful to know the accuracy of salt during the dyeing process, as it is mostly added manually. There are so many chances of error. It can be impact the shade depth during the dyeing process if added more or less quantity of the salt. Thanks everyone for your kind attention. For any question and query and suggestion, I am available on WhatsApp in KMC group and personally also for 24/7. Thanks again.